Alright, welcome back to the channel. You guys requested me to do a video showing how I make my maps for the buttons for the Elite controller. So we'll get into this and we will configure a brand new profile. I'll name this YouTube. Just to have one. And now this looks pretty complicated for, your average user, but let me explain it to you really quick. So basically this is telling you what buttons are mapped to what. And the way you can change this is, say I wanted to make this left stick click actually activate the right stick click for whatever reason, you would change this to right stick click and it would do that. Obviously I'm not going to do that now, but that's explaining what happens. You can also do things like launch app, mute the TV, open the guide, record what just happened, see party, send message, which is really helpful. The party and the message are actually really helpful things. Start, stop recording for you streamers out there, and then achievements and view friends. So those are some pretty good things that could happen. I wish we had a third button in the middle of the controller to do that with. For instance, on right below the Xbox button or something like that would be great, because I usually use all my buttons. I would love a dedicated message button on the controller. Instead of a share button, I think a message button would be much better for the Xbox Series X controller. But anyways, we'll get into what I usually do. So I usually set up my games with the bottom paddles as my most used paddles. But what I'll do is I'll take the top paddles and flip them upside down so the little notch is facing downwards, and I'll put them on the bottom. It's more comfortable for me that way. So I like my, you have to remember this is also looking at the back of the controller. So the one on the screen that's highlighted right here, this Y, when you flip the controller over, is actually going to be on your right paddle. So just remember that. When you're setting it up quickly, you can forget about that sometimes. So I like that to be my B for crouch. So my primary button will be B, the B button, and that changes it to the B button. And then if you do, say I wanted this to be B, but also wanted it to be Y, for whatever reason, I would change this top paddle to a shift button, used as a shift button right here. That uses it as a shift button. Now when I push that top button, or that top paddle, and the bottom paddle at the same time, it would push this would become Y. Then you'd be shifting it to the Y button. So if you only wanted to have paddles on the right side of the controller, and then the top left paddle used as a shift button or something like that, you could actually have 4 buttons with the paddles, and then you have to dedicate one paddle to a shift button, or one button to a shift button, which is kind of interesting. So you can get 6 buttons controlled by the paddles, but you have to give up one paddle space to make that happen, if that makes sense. So I may start doing that on some games and using that as a, I may make that a shift button. I think I'd do the top one as a shift button. So I use it as a shift button, and I want the button, I want the Y to be a action. I'd like that to open up my messages. And then I'd like the other paddle to open up my my party. Be great. So now if I push my top left paddle and the right paddles, it'll either open up the party or messages, and they're both B, but I'd like this one to be right on the D-pad. So D-pad right, I'm setting this up to play Battlefield 1, just so you guys know. So that's right on the D-pad. My left bottom button I like to be A, because I like that to jump. So I'll leave that as A. For shift for that, I would like it to be left on the D-pad. And usually I make the top paddle left on the D-pad, but because that's now my shift button, I'm going to have to use it as left on the D-pad. So now, when I use this controller, I'll show you guys in a second. So that's set up. I'm not changing any of these face buttons. I don't recommend changing any of these buttons unless you really want to, because why would you want, for instance, if you wanted to make the right on the D-pad as your right stick click, you can do that, but I've never found a use for it. If you have disabilities, say you can't really use your thumbs that well or something like that. I know someone who doesn't have a thumb on one hand and they play with their hands sprawled out across the controller, and it's easier for them to push the D-pad with a finger than it is to reach over there and push the AXYB button. So they actually changed their D-pad to AXYB, and they did that. That's a cool thing to do. So we'll get into the sticks now. The sticks, this is my primary stick. I don't want it to be a shift. I like to put this on smooth, and then I like to smoothen the curve just a little bit to about there. I think that's what I like. And what that does is, if you look at the thing here, the white is where your controller actually is, and the cream color is where your controller is registering that it is. So it's not as rapid. It allows me to make quick flicks, but the controller not jerk across the screen quickly. That's why I like it. If you put it on instant, you are instantly going to be over there. You see that it leads pretty heavily. And if you turn this all the way up, you're going to, look how much lead time that is. So let's see. Now my controller is barely to the side, but it's registering as me being almost all the way out. So it's pretty intense. And I use radial calculation. I'm not sure what that actually does, honestly. To be honest with you guys, I'm not sure. But I use radial, and I've always used that. So we'll put this back to smooth on my usual curve. I use the same exact setup for the other stick, smooth, and to the 2. It just works best for me. Here's where it gets tricky. For the triggers, the first number is controlling where your trigger starts. So if you put this at 50, your trigger's not even going to register until you push it 50% down. I'm pushing my trigger down starting now, and it's not even registering until I get to there. So 50%. I don't know why you would ever want to do that. That's basically like handicapping your trigger pull. I don't know why you would do that. So don't mess with this this first notch. You can see how this one's sticking up and this one over here is sticking down. What you want to do, if anything, I don't really change the left trigger in shooters, because here's an accurate representation of how much I'm pulling the trigger right here. I don't change the left trigger that much. I put it to about, well, usually I won't change it at all on this game, because sometimes you need to pull that all the way into fully activate the scope. If you put that to 50 and the trigger stops here, some sniper rifles in this game for some reason will not scope in unless they register 100% pull. And by keeping it at 100%, it allows me to, I can be halfway through a trigger pull and stop to aim down sights instead of scope in. Helps you if say you're going to scope in on someone and an enemy runs right out in front of you and you've already started your trigger pull. It's going to be split-second decisions, obviously. But if you've already started that trigger pull and you're here, you can stop that, and you didn't scope in and waste those precious seconds to get that extra edge. This controller is all about getting that extra edge, and those microseconds is what matters when you're in a close quarters combat shooter game. So for my right stick, or my right trigger, excuse me, I want this trigger to activate a shot the second I touch the trigger. So I'll turn this all the way to basically 1. That means the second I touch that trigger, it is a full registered press and I'm shooting that trigger. Do not do this for racing games. If you do this for racing games, the second you push that trigger down, you're going to go full gas and do a burnout. For racing games, you need this to be at 0 on the top and at 100. Because for, say you play Forza, you need this is your accelerator. So this is light press on the gas pedal, and then full press on the gas pedal. So you need that. If you put this any other way on Forza, say you put it to stop halfway, say I put this to, if I put this to here on Forza, you will never get full power out of the car. Actually, no. You will get full power out of the car, but you'll have a much harder time controlling your throttle inputs. So you want this to be, left alone. If you use trigger locks on Forza, I'll get to that in a second, that's when it'll handicap your being able to push the gas all the way. So there's my trigger setup, the right trigger. Again, like I said, for shooters, I bring this all the way up to the lowest possible setting, which is a 1. And then here's where you can do vibration. I like the vibration on controllers, I'm just used to it. Some people turn it all the way down or just turn off the trigger vibration for whatever reason, and you can do that on this controller. The brightness, I like my brightness all the way down. I just don't like the bright LED button. I think it looks the best when it's turned down, very subtle. It looks good on the controller. It almost looks like it's got a smoky tint to it to match the controller. So that's my setup for that. Now you just back out of it, and then I'll take that YouTube. I've got all these settings here. I'll go down to YouTube and I'll put that to my first slot, Forza Horizon 3. I'll put it there. As you can see, I've been playing Battlefield 4 is my Battlefield 1 setup, but that's just how I roll. You can see I've got it at the 50 on the left trigger and the 30 on the right trigger, and that's just what I use for that specific game. But for Battlefield 1, I actually prefer it the way I just set it up, and we're going to test that out. Look at that. So now we'll go to my YouTube setup. I've also been playing Cyberpunk. The graphics aren't great in that game on this. This is the Xbox One X, so mediocre graphics on Cyberpunk, but we'll get to that in a later video. So we're going to go to my YouTube setup. It's in slot 1. You can edit it here like I just did. You can also name it here. You can delete it. You can copy it to a new profile. If I wanted to copy it to another one, I can, say you want to build another setup off this exact controller layout, you can copy this and then tweak it. So you can already have your button set up without having to go through and set up everything again. I could have copied the Battlefield 4 setup and make this, but I wanted to show you guys from scratch. Let's back out and go some other things. So if you go to this, these 3 dots here, it'll show you your battery level, which is full. It'll show you no update available. I don't have a firmware update, you can check that. I named this Bax V2, just for the Elite Series 2. It's assigned to me and it signs me in. You can also buzz the controller. If I buzz it, you should be able to hear this. That buzzes the controller. Say you left this controller under the couch, or for whatever reason threw a blanket on top of it, or whatever happened to it, behind a pillow, whatever. You can sign in another controller, go to this controller, and buzz it. I'm pretty sure that's what you can, I'm pretty sure. That may be wrong, hold on. That might be wrong. But I know you can buzz it to test your vibration. You can definitely do that. I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure you can buzz this from another controller. I'm like 90% sure, I'll have to confirm. You can turn on Copilot if you have someone with a disability or a kid playing a game and you want to help them play the game. You can turn on Copilot. That allows you to control parts of the game with your controller while they control parts of the game with their controller. Very cool feature. And then a lot of people don't know what this little scientific little beaker symbol looks like or what it does. So what this does, this is a test mode. It'll test your controller, tell you every input you're putting in on the bottom here. You can see it lighting up. You can test all your buttons to make sure they're properly registering. Right trigger, L trigger, right bumper, paddles. This is where you test. So this paddle's right on the D-pad and B. But if I push this shift key, let's see, that's wrong. If I push this shift key, that's going to go to my messages or parties. If I do that, that's going to go to my messages right there. Now it's going to be A, B, or right on the D-pad. If I push shift and push that, it's left on the D-pad. So that's a great way to do that. And test your controller to make sure it's working properly. Then you can do the, you have to do start and menu to exit the test mode. To get you out of the test mode. And then this just brings you to the wonderful, slow loading screen for Xbox Assist, but nobody uses that. It's just terrible. So that is how you set up your controller for the Elite Series 2. And now we're going to game with this for a little bit, but I'll upload the gameplay after this video. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I just screen shared this from my Xbox, so excuse the, you know, if there's any quality issues or anything like that. If this helped you out in any way to make this, please like and subscribe to the channel, or feel free to ask questions. So now I'm going to get into some Battlefield 1, and I'll start that on the next video. Thanks for watching, guys. Really enjoy the support.